Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. And you'll never miss a story again. People think being a good man means being strong, unshakable. But I always believed it was the small things. Waking up early to make coffee, remembering the way she liked her eggs, carrying her umbrella even when it looked like a clear sky. That was how I loved. Her name was Hannah. We were together 9 years, married for 6. She was my partner, my anchor, my safe place. Or at least, that's what I believed. We met through mutual friends during a weekend hiking trip. She twisted her ankle halfway through the trail, and I carried her the last mile without thinking twice. She teased me the whole way, and I laughed so hard that my face hurt by the time we reached the parking lot. That moment stayed with me for years. The way she smiled through pain, the way she didn't pretend to be anything she wasn't. We started dating a month later. Our relationship moved quickly, but never recklessly. We were intentional. We talked about the future, shared goals, family, where we wanted to live, what kind of life we wanted to build. We even picked out the names of our future kids one night on a blanket in the backyard, under a sky full of stars. For a long time, it felt like we were working toward that life together. I worked in IT, stable job, decent hours. She was a freelance writer, bouncing between projects but always chasing something more. I admired her for that, for her drive, for how hard she tried to make it on her terms. But somewhere in year 5 of our marriage, something shifted. It was subtle at first, a kind of restlessness. She started talking about new opportunities, new people she was meeting at writing retreats and industry events. I was proud of her, of course, but I also noticed how she started pulling away, not physically, but emotionally. Our dinners got quieter. Her laughter became less frequent. She spent more time at her desk with the door closed, headphones in, locked in some world I couldn't reach. One night I asked her if everything was okay. She smiled and said, "Of course, just stressed." I believed her. I always believed her. Until I couldn't. It was a Wednesday afternoon when it happened. I was home early from work. One of the servers went down, and the office sent everyone home while they sorted it out. I parked the car, grabbed groceries from the back seat, and walked inside like any other day. She didn't hear me come in. I could hear her voice down the hall. At first I thought she was on a work call. Her tone was low, familiar. But then I heard her laugh. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. Software giddy. Intimate. I stood there in the hallway, holding a bag of oranges, and listening to her say things that weren't meant for me. I can't stop thinking about last weekend. I wish I were there right now. Yeah, he has no idea. It didn't take long to piece it together. She wasn't just tired. She wasn't just distant. She had found someone else, and I was the fool holding the bag while she built a second life behind my back. I didn't walk in on her. I didn't confront her right then. I just stood there in the hall, the cold reality sinking into my bones. Then I backed away slowly and left. I drove around for hours. No music, no destination. Just me and the silence. I passed gas stations, diners, neighborhoods I'd never seen before. I tried to make sense of what I'd heard, but no excuse could soften the truth. She was cheating on me. And worse, she felt no guilt about it. That night I slept at my brother's place. I didn't tell him why, just said I needed a night away. He didn't press, just handed me a beer, turned on the game, and let me sit in silence. It was the most comfort I'd felt in months. I returned home the next day with a plan. Not revenge, not confrontation, just resolve. I wouldn't explode. I wouldn't accuse. I would observe, quietly, carefully. Because if she had truly chosen someone else, I needed to see it. I needed to let her reveal it herself. Over the next few weeks, I became a ghost in my own home. I watched how she hid her phone the moment I entered the room, how she slipped outside for calls and returned with a faraway look in her eyes. how her mood shifted depending on whether her mystery caller had messaged her that day. And through it all, I played my part. I kissed her on the cheek, made dinner, asked about her writing. I nodded when she gave vague answers and acted like nothing had changed, but inside everything had. I began preparing for the end. I met with a lawyer, quietly moved half our savings into a separate account, gathered documents, made copies. I even found a new apartment, not far, but far enough. And then, one night, she told me she wanted space. "We've grown apart," she said. "I think we need time to figure things out." I nodded. "Maybe a trial separation," she added, "just for clarity." "Of course," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Whatever you need." She looked relieved, like she had expected a fight and was surprised not to get one. That weekend, she packed a bag and said she was staying with a friend. I helped her carry it to the car. She kissed my cheek before getting in and said, "I hope this isn't the end." I watched her drive away. Then I went inside, grabbed my own bag, and left for good. I didn't leave a note. Just the silence she left behind. The apartment I moved into was small, but it didn't matter. It was mine. Clean walls, empty closets, no shared memories pressed into the paint, no perfume lingering on the pillows. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed that first night, staring at the ceiling, trying to feel something, grief, anger, maybe even relief. But all I felt was tired. I turned off the lights and let the silence hold me. In the days that followed, I started living differently. I didn't rush anymore. I walked to the grocery store instead of driving. I stopped at a corner cafe each morning and read a chapter of a book while I sipped coffee. I answered emails only when I needed to. I didn't avoid people, but I didn't seek them out either. I just existed. And slowly I began to feel okay with that. The texts from Hannah came sparingly at first, then more frequently. She didn't ask where I was. She must have realized I wasn't coming back. But she asked how I was, told me she was thinking about me, sent photos of the dog she used to say we didn't have time for, now suddenly part of her life. I didn't reply. She wasn't reaching out for me. She was reaching out to ease her guilt. I'd seen it before. People don't regret hurting you. They regret losing the comfort you gave them. And now that she was alone in that big house with no one to fall back on, she wanted to keep a connection open, just in case. But I was done being her backup plan. A few weeks after I moved, I sat down with my lawyer and finalized the paperwork. She'd be served soon. Everything was already outlined. No drama, no drawn-out arguments. I didn't want her money, her house, or any part of the world she built on a foundation of lies. The next day, I walked into a new gym down the street from my apartment. Nothing fancy, but it had tall windows and didn't smell like regret. I signed up and started showing up at 6 a.m. every morning, not to punish my body, but to reclaim it, to feel something other than betrayal. I started sleeping better, eating better, feeling better. My coworkers noticed. One of them, Jared, pulled me aside and said, "Whatever you're doing, it's working. You look lighter." I just nodded. I stopped carrying something heavy. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. Around that time, I ran into someone unexpected, Maya. She was an old friend. We'd known each other in college, lost touch after graduation, then briefly reconnected through social media a few years ago. She worked in marketing, lived nearby, and happened to be walking out of the bookstore I'd just walked into. At first, the conversation was light. What we'd been up to, who was still in touch from school, how fast time was moving. Then she asked gently, "And how's Hannah?" I paused. "We're done." Her eyes softened. "I'm sorry." "I'm not," I said more easily than I expected. We talked for a few more minutes before exchanging numbers again, this time with the promise to actually catch up. And we did. Coffee, then lunch, then a walk through the park on a cold Saturday afternoon where we talked about everything but the past. She didn't pry and I didn't overshare. It was easy, no expectations, just presence. Meanwhile, Hannah had finally been served the papers. I expected an outburst or a dramatic phone call. Instead, she sent one message. "I didn't think you'd actually leave." I stared at those words for a long time, because that's the thing. They never think you'll walk away, not the quiet ones. They mistake your patience for passivity. your silence for weakness. They keep testing boundaries, thinking you'll stay, no matter how many lines they cross. But one day, you don't. One day, you gather what little dignity they haven't chipped away, and you walk. And by then, it's too late. She tried again a week later. Can we talk? I made a mistake. I thought I needed more. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked to the same bookstore, where I'd run into Maya, bought a new journal, and wrote something at the top of the first page. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself. The divorce was processed in 60 days. Clean, quiet. My lawyer called to say it was done, no complications. She didn't contest anything. I thanked her, hung up, and stood at my window watching the street below. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like turning the last page of a book I should have stopped reading long ago. A few days later, Maya invited me to a small dinner gathering. Just a few friends, nothing fancy. I almost said no. Part of me still hesitated at the thought of being around people again, smiling when I didn't always feel like it. But I went, and I laughed. Not because I was trying to move on or prove anything, but because something about that night, the simplicity of good food, good conversation, and honest laughter, reminded me that life could still be warm. She walked me home after, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. At the door, she said, "You're different now." Different how? Lighter, like you let something go. I did, I said, and I don't think I want it back. She smiled and nodded, then turned and walked away. I stood there for a long moment before stepping inside. The apartment was still, the air cool, and I realized something I hadn't before. I wasn't healing from heartbreak. I was healing from the person I became when I was trying to be enough for someone who never saw me. The next few weeks were full of small moments: fresh sheets, clean floors, sunlight spilling across the couch in the late afternoon, texts from Maya, jokes, walks, life happening again, slowly and gently. And not once did I think about going back. Because when you finally leave someone who made you feel like you were always asking for too much, you start to understand the difference between being wanted and being needed. Hannah had needed me until she didn't. Maya didn't need anything from me. She just liked being around me. There was no performance, no pressure, just presence. One night we sat in the park as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples. She asked, "Do you miss her?" I thought about it. I miss who I thought she was. She nodded like she understood. Sometimes that's harder. But I don't want her back, I added. Not even close. Good, she said, because she already had the best version of you, and she still walked away. I looked at her. No, I said. She had a version of me that tried too hard, that bent and twisted to keep everything together. She never met this version. Maya smiled. Well, I'm glad I get to. And so was I. Healing isn't something that announces itself. There's no banner, no finish line. It just shows up in the quietest moments. Like when you wake up and realize your first thought isn't about the person who left. Or when you pass a familiar street and your chest doesn't tighten anymore. It happens gradually, silently, until one day you feel like yourself again, and not the version of you that existed for someone else's comfort, but the real you, the one you buried under years of compromise. By spring, I had fully moved into my new life. I changed my routines. I joined a weekend hiking group. I picked up photography again, something I hadn't touched in nearly a decade. Every Saturday, I'd explore parts of the city I'd once taken for granted. Not for anyone else, not to post or prove anything, just to see beauty again through my own lens. Maya became a part of that life slowly and naturally. She never pushed. She never made assumptions. She just showed up, consistently and kindly. We spent time together without pressure: dinners, long drives, coffee runs, where we sat in the car and talked until the drinks went cold. She never asked me to explain the past, but she made room for it when I needed to. One night, we were walking through a quiet street, the kind with string lights and the smell of fresh bread drifting from late-night bakeries. She asked, "What did you learn from everything?" I didn't hesitate. That love built on guilt isn't love, and loyalty isn't always mutual. She nodded. Do you still carry it? I took a deep breath. Less than I used to, but it's not about forgetting. It's about deciding it doesn't get to run my life anymore. She reached for my hand. I'm proud of you. It hit me how few times I'd heard that, and how much it mattered now. Hannah texted again a few weeks later. I hadn't heard from her in months. She wrote, I saw your photos online. They're beautiful. I'm happy you're doing well. There was no anger in me, no urge to reply. I appreciated the message, sure, but I didn't need it. I didn't owe her a response, and I'd made peace with the idea that some chapters close without a final conversation. I archived the message and kept going. My parents had always liked Hannah. In their minds, we had been the perfect couple. They had no idea how much pain had lived behind our smiles. When I told them about the divorce, my mother cried. Not because she was disappointed, but because she didn't know how bad things had become. You never said anything, she whispered. I didn't know how to, I told her. I thought love meant enduring. She held my hand across the kitchen table and said something that stayed with me. Real love doesn't make you disappear. After that, I began telling people the truth, not the messy details, but the honest version of the story. That the marriage ended not because I stopped loving her, but because I started loving myself enough to leave. People respected that, even the ones who didn't understand. By the end of the year, the divorce was a distant memory. The papers were filed, the accounts separated, the furniture divided, the rings stored away. I hadn't seen Hannah in almost 8 months. Then one morning I walked into a small cafe near the bookstore I now frequented, and she was there, sitting by the window, alone. She looked up and saw me. Her expression shifted, recognition, then surprise, then something softer. I didn't panic. I didn't turn away. I just nodded once. She stood and walked toward me. We greeted each other like two people who once shared a life, but now shared only memory. You look good, she said. Thanks, I replied. So do you. There was a pause. I wanted to reach out again, she said, but I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. I appreciate the space, I told her. It gave me time to figure things out. She looked down. I messed up. I said nothing. She looked back up. Not just the cheating, all of it. I got so wrapped up in needing more, I didn't see what I already had. I took a deep breath. You were chasing something. I hope you found it. She smiled sadly. I didn't. I did, I said, but not in someone else, in myself. We stood there for a moment. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't hopeful. It was just closure. She didn't ask for a second chance. I think she knew it wasn't hers to ask for anymore. Before she walked away, she said, I'm glad you're happy. I believed her, and more importantly, I was. Later that night, Maya and I sat on my balcony sipping tea as the city lights flickered in the distance. I told her about the encounter. She didn't tense up or look worried. She just listened. What did it feel like? She asked. Like looking at a photo of someone you used to know, I said. Familiar, but no longer home. She nodded and rested her head on my shoulder. We didn't talk about it again. We didn't need to. Life moved forward. The holidays came and went. We spent them together. Quiet dinners, a few small gifts, laughter over burnt cookies. Nothing extravagant, just real. And that was enough. One day, I printed one of my photos, an image of a sunrise over the lake from one of my hikes. I framed it and hung it in the hallway. Maya saw it and asked, Why that one? I smiled. Because it's the first one I took after I left. The first one that didn't feel heavy. She leaned in closer. It's beautiful. So starting over, I said. A year after the divorce, I barely thought about Hannah. Not out of resentment, but because life had filled the space she once occupied with new memories, new meaning. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't bitter. I was free. And freedom doesn't always look like fireworks or celebrations. Sometimes it looks like a cup of coffee on a quiet morning, a hand to hold without fear, A day that ends with peace. I used to think being the quiet one meant being weak, that people like me always ended up losing. But I didn't lose. I learned and I let go. And that, I realized, was the most powerful thing I could have done. Because while she ran toward noise, I walked toward clarity. And in that silence, I found everything I had been missing.